All right, guys, welcome to Overshot, a paintball podcast. I am your host this episode, Travis. Waldo is also here. This episode does have a sponsor. Our sponsor is Dizana Sports. They have awesome joggers, which I wear all the time. They have gloves and also any soft goods, t-shirts, anything like that you can get from them. And yeah, they make really good stuff. If you use code Overshot, you can get 10% off on anything they got at dizanasports.com. And yeah, man, they got really good stuff. And if you use the code, it really helps us out. It tells Tim that we came, and he sends us an email and says, "Yo, a bunch of dudes bought stuff with the code, and it looks good for us." But I'm gonna get right into it because I love the guest we have today. He's Joe Barrett of Sacramento DMG. He has a nice long history, and we're gonna start it right off. So, like I said, the classic question, man: how did you start playing paintball? What was your first experience like?
Oh man, my first time actually playing paintball, not just shooting one of those plastic blade pump guns from Walmart at a stop sign with some buddies, was the classic cliche story. I got invited to a birthday party, and it was at this place called Tsunami down the street from me in Tonawanda, New York, which is right outside of Buffalo. This field was a horrible, filthy, dirty, half width, half length indoor field with hyperball plastic corrugated bunkers and about 3 inches of slimy paint on the ground. But
Lovely.
all that, aside, I was hooked. The conditions don't really matter. That first time you start shooting at a bunch of your little 10-year-old buddies and the loud plastic bunkers start banging and you get that adrenaline pump. If you are that right kind of person, the bug bites you hard. And after that, it was over. I decided to figure out how to play as much as possible.
Awesome. And how often were you playing after that? Were you playing every weekend after that?
It took a little bit. After the very first time playing, I remember I played for about a year in the woods just because paintball was expensive. Of course, it's still kind of an expensive sport.
Yeah.
So my parents, who were divorced at the time, my dad had some property, and behind his own backyard was like a big field, probably about 100 yards worth of field, and then another 100 yards worth of like nice dense woods, which made for two really cool type of paintball arenas. And for about a year, me and my little brother and a couple of our little buddies down the block would all, we'd split like one of those green ammunition crates worth of paint that you get from Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
And, my dad would have no problem getting me a 3,000 box for $40 if it meant me and all my friends were going to play all day, as opposed to, now getting a case of paint might last you a point or two the way we play. So,
Yeah, right.
paintball was expensive, but at that point, it's kind of cheap to play it that way because he's making it so me and my brother can play this fun little sport with our friends in the backyard, probably I'd say at least once a week, like, your typical weekend warriors. Maybe
Mhm.
not every weekend because I was a little kid, so I was still into a plethora of other things, skateboarding and soccer and
Right.
football and stuff like that. But the bug was definitely sinking where it was becoming a hobby. And the more I played it, the more I wanted to play, or I couldn't wait till that next time that would happen. And, you're not diehard at that age. You're not missing other practices or birthdays or holidays. But I remember must have been around 11 or 12 years old. And I got invited to another birthday party. My buddy Chris down the street, who, only played paintball just this one time, but he played again at
Mhm.
that place, Tsunami, that began it all. And I went back there, and by about a year of, learning how to be sneaky and tactical and get my shot down in the woods, I was surgical compared to all my little friends who aren't, nonstop paintball players.
Yeah.
And in that speedball setting, rather than being terrified this time, I was just destroying my little buddies all day long. And right that week, I decided I was going to go home. It was summertime, and I was going to start mowing all my neighbors' lawns and doing whatever I could for extra money to buy paint to play there. And then in the Buffalo, winters are pretty cold. So when winter
Yeah.
hit, I started shoveling driveways for $20 a driveway up and down my street. And before I could even, legally work, I think legal working papers age like 13 or 14, I was
Yeah,
already
something like
like
that.
figuring out ways to make at least 50 or 60 bucks a day, several times a week, so that I could play paintball at least once or twice a week. And then I started reffing at that same field to cover my entry fees. So I was basically living at that indoor field, Tsunami, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, working and refereeing for like bags of paint, basically, not even for money. And then playing Saturday and Sunday because my entry was covered, and bringing all the paint that I had been saving up for. And then, of course, I'm also saving up for, my first $1,000 autococker and things like that.
So what autococker did you go with? What'd you get? Did you get a Shock Tech back then? What was like the rage back then?
Oh no, I mean, my parents were not supportive of paintball like at all. It took a while to convince them to let me ride my bike to the field, because at first I was sneaking out into the woods. Like my dad was cool with it, but my mom was not. So yeah, there was no support from either of them to get those Shock Tech type cockers or free flows or anything like that. But I was able to go to this store down the street from my neighborhood called Sports Replay, which is kind of one of those, you probably have something like it. They sell any type of sports stuff where, let's say you're done with your hockey skates, you bring them in, you sell them for like 30 bucks, they upmark them for 50 bucks, and they just sell used gear. It's almost like going to a garage sale that's just always open in a storefront. In their back section, they had some paintball stuff because they worked closely with the Tsunami field. I think one of the owners was a co-owner with the paintball field. So I could drop in there and say hi to this guy, Pat Vanilla Wava. Rest in peace. He actually died a few years ago.
Oh, man.
But I could go in there and just talk to him about paintball stuff. And back then, it's that nostalgia range where, you might see a few electro guns, like some Angels, or maybe like an X-Mag on the wall or something like that. But there is no like affordable range markers yet. There's no electric guns that I can just get. So even the auto cockers on the wall are $1,000 for a mechanical cocker.
Yeah.
So, he knows that I'm the kid that's now reffing at his field that he's a co-owner at. So he hooked me up for my very first gun was a right feed hammer auto cocker with a J&J ceramic barrel and a bunch of mix match parts. He probably made it out of a box of mixed parts.
Like spares. It was the spare cocker.
It was the spare cocker. And it was $750. And then I got a Revy for it and a 45 Steely tank. And all said and done, I spent about $900 for my first tournament quality gun.
Right.
Which was just a beat up looking right feed autococker.
So go on up.
So what was your next step? I know eventually. So like, what was your first competitive team? And then I know you ended up playing the AXBL. I know we were speaking to Kyle about that a bit, and then just kind of go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So I guess trying not to take too much time because it's been a 20-year career now. After that first autococker, quickly I'm showing up to that ball field and getting invited to play with the local team, Tsunami Force and Tsunami Force Kids. I would be on the kids team because I'm just a 13-year-old kid. And I'm realizing I made a mistake. I just dropped $900 on a gun that's barely going to give me enough firepower because most of these guys are older dudes or rich kids with daddy and mommy's money, and they're shooting Angels and the early GZ Intimidator, and eventually in 02 and 03, the Impulse and the 03 Matrix. So once again, sold that autococker, worked a bunch, did everything I could, sold my brand new bicycle I got for my birthday, sold a couch out of my parents' basement without them noticing it, and went and bought a $1,000 red non-vision Impulse. And now I was ready to play. I could have, electric. It didn't have ramping back then, but I could shoot, 10, 15 balls a second with the new Halo B force fed on top of it, and started playing all the tournaments at Tsunami, and then GRC Paintball down in Wellsville, and then MVP, which is the pretty well-known real like clean facility, I guess, in Rochester. And right around that time of like finishing my first year of like little 3-mans and 4-man tournaments, the AXBL happened. At first, it was the NYXL, but then it transitioned through by PBL and like working with the CXBL league to become the AXBL. And I started playing for teams local to me at first, Tonawanda Nightmare, Sodas Predators. But then I joined longtime legendary player, coach, and industry guy Buddy Bauer's camp, the Rhythm camp. And at time, Buddy had Rhythm, Buffalo Soldiers, Rockland Hustle, which was my team, and then like 2 or 3 MXL teams in the league below us. So I started to really get my bearings down in 2005 and 6 and 7 in that AXBL big regional league where it was full X-ball, hour games, 15 balls a second. Around that time, I also started playing NPPL in Division 3, just kind of on throw together teams, HK Army, like for fun teams. And, I didn't have a lot of money as a 14-year-old kid, and I wasn't able to fly to like the West Coast events. But if there was an event within 15 hours that me and friends could carpool to, we were driving to those NPPL events, and those were just so much fun. And that was kind of the beginning of it all, just a big regional league and Division 3 7-man.
So I think did you end up playing with Avalanche for 7-man a little bit?
I did. I had I had one little stint with Avalanche. I went out and tried out for the pro team, and they were like, "Oh, where do you live?" And I was like 10 hours away, and they were like, "Yeah, man. I mean, we have all these Arsenal Predator kids right here. You had a good tryout, but it's too many variables. Like, what if your car breaks down? Blah blah blah." So I pretty much didn't think that was going to happen. And then about 2 weeks before the NPPL DC Challenge, I can't even remember what year it was. It must have been like 2011, I think. The guy, David Archibald, who was like Frank Connell's secondhand man, called me up and he's like, "Hey, Joe, I'm doing a divisional squad to go along with the pro team this event, and we could use another guy or two. My buddy Harrison Fry is already on that team. He was at the tryout, and that was the first time I had met Harrison, who's now a pro player, and I've played with him on a host of teams in a host of different countries. But he's like, Harrison vouched for you. He said he plays against you in the big regional leagues, so I'd like to bring you on the team. Can you get here?" And I was like, "It's this weekend." And I called up this other kid who was pitting for a pro team explicit at the time that I knew was driving there. I was like, "Yo, can I drive with you? I'll give you gas money." And he's like, "Absolutely." So I hop in the car with him, drive to, I was Richmond, Virginia, I guess, for Pev's paintball, and jump on this Avalanche team with a bunch of guys I don't know and Harrison. And we go 4-4 in prelims. We make it in the last wild card spot. We thought we weren't even going to make it in. And then we go undefeated Sunday and win the tournament.
There you go.
And Archie's looking around. He's like, "Man, we're pretty good for not even practicing together. You guys want to play Vegas, the next event? This is going to cover the entire Vegas event, the winnings from this. Or I can just pay you out right here." And we were like, "Hell yeah." We're all 2021 area at the time. So we're like, we haven't been to Vegas. Let's do it. We get a completely free event going to Vegas. And this was kind of one of those, just very like dream-esque situations, like, very like kind of like miracle movie situation where you're like, okay, we're going to this event. At this point, we're just happy we're going to Vegas for free. And, paint's covered, our hotel, everything's covered between our winnings and the sponsors. We didn't drop $1. And if we even win some games, we'll be happy. Like, it would be a fluke to win twice in a row. Well, the same squad comes back, plus my buddy Jadwin Hart, who played with me on Wellsville FSU, and he's a well-known, really good player out of Western New York. So now their squad's even a little better, and we just go completely undefeated through Vegas, like mop everybody up. It was ridiculous. It's not like X-Ball, it's point for point. So not only did we not lose a point, but I don't think I got shot until our semifinals game trading out with someone. And then we win the finals game in like historic action against I think it was against a DMG team, ironically, because my buddy Josh Hallberg told me he remembered playing against me that event way back then. It was DMG Royals or Royalty or something like that. But that was our only game that was tough, where each game came down to like a body or two versus a body or two. And the second point came down to a one-on-one, and we won it. And so we win this completely free event, and we get like, it was a big payout. It was like 10 grand or something back then. And we have a 7-guy roster. So we each went home that event with like 12 or 1,300 bucks in pocket from a free NPPL event. And I honestly, it's funny because I think to this day, that was the most money I've ever made personally from a paintball event.
Little tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
No, that's too funny because like I play on the amateur Ground Zero team and Archie plays on the pro. So it's kind of funny how like, Archie and just everything comes full circle, man.
Yeah, that's cool that you know Archie. I owe a lot to that guy. Oh man, I'm sorry guys. I think I'm gonna have to bring the headphones off and get a little echoey here because my phone just went down from 20% to 4%. So I don't want to lose you guys in the middle of this.
Yeah, man.
1 second.
You got to do what you got to do.
A little bit again. I'll take it back out for a while. My phone charges pretty quickly, but yeah, it was just about to die there. But yeah, Archie, I owe a lot to him because on top of, I've only played 2 events with the guy, but we talked a lot on the phone, and he became kind of like another mentor for me. Like I already had a lot of legendary mentors in the game that I personally considered them as like my own, not just coaches, but like teachers and like people that I could ask for whatever, for how to like get further in the game. I had Buddy Bauer and Justin Bryce from Lockout, Rob Cole, Lockout player and field owner, Mitch Karn, Mike Lehman. I just had all these guys I looked up to that lived right near me, but now I had another guy from another region, and he was very influential because, all the guys around me, I'd already grown up with them since the early 2000s, but getting this new guy into my circle in 2011 from another area, that just kind of like took a risk and like brought me back once and then twice to win tournaments with, and then kind of kept giving me more insight on like what my next moves are, because he knew how badly I wanted to go pro. It was cool, and it was one of those first times that sparked the idea in my head about how important it is to start playing for different. I had already been jumping around kind of like one of those, free agent type people in divisional paintball for a while, but I didn't want to just jump around event to event anymore. Now I wanted to go camp to camp and kind of learn the different play styles of each region. And that was really the beginning of it. I knew how the best players in New York played, but now I kind of was getting a feel through Archie and Frank Connell of how New England paintball was played. And then eventually I would start playing for teams in the Midwest out of Chicago and Detroit, like 810 and eventually Crush, which was my first NPPL pro team. And then eventually I lived in Florida 2 separate times, and I learned how people play in the South. So yeah, that's kind of a lot of, Archie kind of was a main factor into beginning to breed this very unique paintball style I have, where from traveling around so much, I can see a lot of people, they only see the game one way. They see it just the way they were taught by their pro coach or the pro player in their area. But I kind of have chameleoned my game to absorb in every single type of team style that I've played with. And so when a lot of people will see a problem and they'll have their one perspective and solution on it, I'll look at it with 20 different perspectives and solutions and kind of take a bit from each to kind of figure out like, okay, well, all these styles would have decided that this was the best move. So that's not just one guy's opinion anymore. That's now unanimously the best way to play out this type of field or situation. And it really heightened my game IQ a lot quicker than all the other
peers around me that they had all been growing up playing with me and around me for just as long as I had, but they just stayed in their little bubble. They never really branched out or decided to do those road trips to other regions. And quickly I became like kind of the coaching mind in my area before moving for a host of teams you guys would probably know, like FSU and several of the teams that came out of that Syracuse Field head rush, as well as my collegiate team, University of Buffalo. So yeah, that was kind of the beginning.
So have you ever played any woodsball tournaments?
Sorry?
Have you ever played a woodsball tournament? UWO?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually, man, it's weird. Just right place at the right time, I guess. I got to play the very first UWL before they even really decided that it was going to be a league thing. It was down in Central Florida at this field called Tracks and Trails. It like way out in the bush. People in Florida know about CFP, but there's this other field called Tracks and Trails that's like 300 acres. And they used to go there for the Other Living Legends standalone event, the Dreaded Legends, because you could fit like 2,000 people in that big palmy forest. And there was like old Vietnam villages and broke down plains and stuff like that. So this one day, the first time I moved to Florida, I lived with Kyle Berry, and we lived near Mike Paxson and Robert Anderson from Aftershock. And Kyle Berry happened to be busy that weekend. I forget what he was doing. He was working. So they reached out to me because we were in the same household. So I think we were on speakerphone or something like that, making breakfast. And they were like, "Oh, Joe, you want to play?" Like by now I've already, been playing a little bit of D1 semi-pro. So this is, it's weird because like I've been playing pro for a while, and it's not that I get starstruck, but I still always get humbled when like the legends of the game approach me. Like I have enough respect for these guys. They used to be on posters on my wall that when Mike Paxson asked me if I want to play woods ball tournament, and there's 2 different divisions, we could play both 10-man and 5-man. I'm like, it doesn't matter what's going on that weekend. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, Paxson. I'd love to be your teammate for an event. And then we win 10-man, and then we win 5-man undefeated. And we played it just like those guys did back in the day. Like, woods ball tournament isn't like NXL. When you play a woods ball tournament, you're normally drinking beers throughout the day and just hanging out with those old, salty 30, 40-year-old vets. And there's so many of them there. There's like, name any big name that used to play pro paintball in the 90s, and they've all came back out for this tournament. And I'm playing with quite a few of those guys on this team called, I think it was Black Sunday. And we go out there, and I'm like their scout because I'm the youngest guy on the team. So they're like, "Oh, just run as far as you can, Joe. We'll catch up and we'll lay down, shitload of fire over your head. You just basically draw them out. We'll see where people are shooting from because it's deep, heavy palm. So if you don't get them shooting first, you'll never see them." So I would basically just sprint somewhere, dive into a palm bush, lay flat, and listen to Paxson and a bunch of older guys behind me start just chain gunning through bushes with their autocrackers and just, screaming and cursing and that standard stuff. People are overshooting each other. People are motherfucking each other. And then you come out after that game laughing and kind of shit talking with that other team. And then you have a beer together. And then about a half hour goes by and you go out and do another one.
Yeah, funny story.
You what?
I played against you.
You were at that? Really?
Yep.
What team were you on?
Master Blaster.
You were on Master Blasters. Oh my God. I almost, that's so funny because, dude, I was going to say, I thought it came down to us versus you guys, and you guys had those sweet, like dark green camouflage jerseys. There was another buddy of mine that was on your team. I forget his name, but real big guy with a beard. Man, it's gonna bug me. But yeah, that's so you remember what it was like. That was such a fun event in there.
You and Pat what's up in the format.
Yeah.
I didn't want to play over there. I was like, I'm playing the other side.
Yeah.
I'll go get Todd Adamson and Bob Anderson.
Yep, Todd Adamson was there. Yeah, I remember nobody really wanted to play on our side, and it wasn't really because of me. It was because, do you remember that event? You could choose one of your 10 guys to be the heavy gunner, and everybody else had to shoot mechs and stuff like that. But one guy in your team could have a uncapped full auto gun. So we're like, well, of course we're gonna give it to Paxson. So we gave Paxson this decked out die NT, and not only is it shooting like 25 balls a second with a rotor on top of it, but I mean, this event's long over. So between me and all of you guys watching, Paxson had this regulator on the front of that gun that, I don't know where you get these things, but you didn't have to put an Allen in the bottom of it to screw it. You could just turn the whole regulator and it would crank the speed up. So it was like a cheater regulator. So he would, bring the gun up, shoot it over the chrono, 290, and they'd be like, you're good. And then as soon as we tag up at the boards, he would just turn it all the way. And his NT must have been shooting 350 because somebody would start shooting at me and I'd yell, I'd be like, Paxson, he's in the palm 50 feet out. And I'd hear Paxson, bzzz, and he would just chop the bushes down. Like he was purposely using the less brittle paint and he was just cutting away people's palm bushes. And then you'd hear the people start getting hit at 25 balls a second, 350. And people would be screaming. They'd be like, oh, like just trying to get out of the bushes so they don't get, he was just wearing people out.
Oh, that's too funny.
So
yeah. What
happened next?
What?
You left that down.
After so let's see here. After Avalanche, I graduated school right around then, and that was the first time. So yeah, this is a part of my history that like really led me into pro paintball. So after that couple, that like winning 2 in a row and kind of feeling on top of the world, and already like winning a bunch of my regional leagues and stuff like that, I just really wanted to make my push for pro paintball. And it was like, okay, I have no obligations yet. I'm barely 21 years old. I just got back from winning like a world championship in Bangkok, Thailand too. So like that was finally a time when, me and Harrison Fry found this a while ago, that if you can't play pro here, you have to be willing to travel, even if it's on your own dime, and go play in other countries. Because if you can get in those open divisions in other countries, now you'll play against the other traveling pro players. Like the guys like, before, like I'm one of those guys now, but it would have been like Tim Montresor and a lot of those Heat guys and Ronnie Dizon, Nico Hyde. There's just all these guys. There's about 20 people, Marcelo Margot, Greenspan, that they all play like 20, 25 events a year. They don't just play the 5 events in the US. They are constantly playing in international leagues. So my first big break was, it was at the end of when I was in college. It was like 2011. I went and played in Bangkok, Thailand, and there were a few of those guys out there. And a lot of them, they were there for this other weird experimental format that wasn't even paintball. It was called taser ball, where you're running around with giant soccer balls, like playing a game of soccer, but you can get tased if you have the ball. Like people have these hand tasers. I swear to God, this was the craziest. You've seen it? Yeah. Travis, if you've never seen this, YouTube this. It is crazy. But anyways, so finally, like I start to get a little bit of rapport with pro players from, like driving around and partying in another country and getting to have like one-on-one conversations and starting to earn a little respect from people actually, seeing me win an open division tournament and seeing that I have some talent, because nobody's really watching you on the divisional fields. And even in Division 1 semi-pro, you're not really getting scouted by like pro players and teams until you're on that Sunday court field, so you better be winning every event, or else how many times are they really seeing you? And coming out of Western New York, it's not like I really live near any pro players or teams because since the Philly Americans died in like '09, there just wasn't anything near me. Until recently with New York Extreme, which I got to play for, but that wasn't for years later. So back then it was like I'm graduated from school. I just won a bunch of tournaments and people kind of know me. I don't have a girlfriend, a real job, a house, and this is kind of my opportunity to like really make that push for pro. So I moved down to the worst part of Florida, which is Lakeland, right next to Auburndale, where the Fantasy of Flight and the old World Cup used to be. And that's about all that's known for is the Fantasy of Flight. But if you actually like go through that area of Auburndale, it's like the most horrifying trailer park, just white, trashy, rednecky, a lot of people doing meth and a lot of like weird junkies just running the streets at night. People. Yeah, like me and my buddy John Zornick rented a house, not an apartment. We rented a house and each had our own bedroom for $200 a month. So it's the hood. But yeah, so I moved down there right at the end of school, and I am training all summer as many times as I can at Central Florida Paintball until the Tampa Bay Damage tryout comes up. And at the time, Tampa Bay Damage is like at the peak they've ever been at. Like coming out of 2011 and 12, there was a point that they won 5 events in a row between PSP and NPPL. So this was a ridiculous team. This was one of those teams where, you hear guys are getting paycheck like Jason Edwards and some of these legends on the squad at the time. Dave Baines and J-Rab and Rainey had been through it. Mouse played for a few events with them. So around that time, I'm not just trying out for a pro team. Like I'm going all in. I'm going out for like the number one team where if I make it this year, maybe I'll get a $50,000 a year salary in my head, Yeah. And of course, I didn't know things would change drastically in the industry and all that in the following year. And as a rookie, I was never going to get a salary like that. But sometimes you got to have that hope to really like put it all on black, like, because if you don't risk it all and you're not willing to like sink your ships and go 100% in, then you're never going to make it. Like if you already have these plan Bs and audibles in your head, those are the guys who they don't put in every single bit of effort. So yeah, I moved there and I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't have anything. I had saved about $5,000 and I budgeted so that the $5,000 would last me 1 full year if I wasn't able to find a job. So I was banking on in that year, hopefully I'll find a job and I can have the money stretch more. But if I don't, it'll last me the year till I make the tryout, which is about 9 months away. And then, at the very beginning of the next season, like around the same time that I'm graduating, like it would be, I don't know, March, I guess. And I'm graduating like in May. So it's like 10 months away. And then hopefully I'm making that big $50,000 a year salary playing for Damage, which once again, it was a complete fallacy and nobody told me that, but I was ready to go there and prove that I was worth $50K as a rookie player. So yeah, making $5,000 a year, most people can't make that last. Like what that basically entails, especially if you want to play paintball every Saturday and Sunday, and you want to drill during the week with some of the Damage guys, like Brian Smith, who's back in Damage now. Finally, I owe a lot to him. He took me under his wing, and he would invite me every time he went out to drill on Wednesdays or Fridays. So I'm shooting a ton of paint each week. Like I'm probably spending $200 or $300 a week out of my $5,000 for it's going to be 48 weeks here on that. So do the math. Like it's cutting it super close. Luckily, I found this dude. I think his name was Hotbox, but he came from a wealthy family and his parents bought him an encapsulator machine. So he was selling cases of white box paint for $20 each. And if you bought 6 cases, he'd give it to you for $100. So that started saving my budget. So now I could get 6 cases a week for $100 rather than, $200 or $300. But even still, I have rent. So I went and found that crack house in the hood for $200 a month. Now I have to worry about food. I kid you not, and plenty of my friends knew this when they came to visit me. For that entire 10 months, I lived on a $7 a week grocery budget.
Dang.
You need to post
that.
Post that?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for right now, it helped people. Yeah, $7 a week. A lot of people spend $7 to $10 on every meal. So, how do you eat for $7 a week, you ask? This was my entire this was my diet for 10 months. Unless, my family visited and treat me out to a meal or something like that. So, only tap water because it's free. Never drank anything else. And I was like, what is the cheapest thing that I can get sustenance and last on? Well, in Florida, eggs are really cheap. Like you can get like 5 or 6 dozen eggs for like $4 or $5. It was super cheap. It was like $1 a dozen if you went to like Costco. So I would eat nothing but eggs all day. And then, if you go to the dollar store, you can get like a big loaf of bread for $1, like, cheap white bread or something like that. So I would eat eggs every different kind of way you can make eggs: scrambled, over easy, omelet, poached, on toast. And that was it.
Whatever works.
With water. But it got me through. And, in that time, it was kind of a blessing because I was also way overweight. Like when I moved to Florida, I used to be like 250. So way bigger than I am now, like 70 pounds heavier. And I already knew in my head this was the uphill battle because you're not going to get picked up by a pro team as a new divisional rookie if you're a big guy. Like, mainly because even if you're really good and like I had gun skills and I was smart, pro teams are only looking for front guys. Like, you need to be athletic. Like, they generally just want a snake front guy, but at least you need to be versatile and athletic enough to be able to play the whole field. So I knew I had like 9 or 10 months till the tryout. So while I was eating on this calorie deficit, I would just do like 1,000 push-ups and pull-ups a day, 1,000 crunches a day, and go on 5-mile runs every morning and every evening around all of Auburndale, which is like a little small town. I'd just run the entire perimeter of it. And yeah, that was basically my life. Like, I didn't have cable, internet. This is kind of pre-smartphones. So I would go on the streets of the library and I would, rent out some books or like some DVDs. And that was, during the weekdays, I would run and do home workouts and then read different books or watch like inspirational movies. Like Invincible was a big one for me because like, if Marky Mark can get picked up as a non-college player onto a pro football team, then why can't this divisional player from New York who's a little bit overweight come down and make it on fucking Tampa Bay Damage?
Right.
Swear to God, that was my mindset. Is every time I thought like, man, I'm tired, or shit, I've already done some played practice today, it'd be like 11 o'clock at night. I'd be like, yeah, but somebody who else is going to be at this tryout might be doing more than you. So get back up and go for that 5-mile run at night. I don't care if it's raining or whatever. And 10 months I lived like that, like barely eating, just running, reading books, and playing paintball 4 or 5 days a week. And eventually the tryout happened, and it was an invite-only tryout. And the 9 other guys that were invited were all pro players, like Gino Benedicto and, these dudes who are coming off of like other pro squads, like trying to get on the better squad.
Right.
And I don't think they would have just invited me if I was just some semi-pro guy living in New York. But because I was down there all the time, like playing in with Static and drilling with Brian Smith, I was like, Brian, you got to get me this invite. Like, I know you're not going to just get me on the team. It's on me to like show up at the tryout and play well, but you got to get me on this tryout. I moved here for this entire reason I moved here isn't for a new way of life or a job. I moved here all to lead up to this one tryout weekend. And he's like, all right, man, I'll get you that spot. So I'm the 10th guy at this tryout. There's a YouTube video of this tryout too. You could search the I think it's 2012 Tampa Bay Damage tryout, and you can.
I've seen it.
Yeah, Joey Blute picking people and yelling people and stuff. And
I'm tagging you, and I gotta pay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so this tryout finally comes around, and I'm the first person there like 2 hours early, just like snap shooting at targets and like warming up, making sure that my running gun is on and all that stuff. And the tryout begins, and it's like 1-on-1s and 2-on-2s. And I kid you not, you can ask any of the Florida like static guys or divisional guys who are watching. I was smoking everybody, like just mowing people down in the 1-on-1s and winning 2-on-1 sometimes. And then eventually you're playing 1-on-1s and mix-ins with the damage guys, and I'm beating most of them too. But then it finally gets into gameplay, and I've lost a good amount of weight by then, but I'm still a bigger guy. I'm still probably 200 or 220 or something like that. And so, I kind of sealed my own fate, because you were allowed to choose where you wanted to play so that you could show your strengths and shine. And I just kept choosing to play the 3 spot and the 2 spot. And I was winning points for us. I was doing clutch stuff, but I was playing kind of like a counter punch game out of the backfield. And after that first day, they had been making like a cut or two here and there off guys they knew didn't already, like guys who were too rusty or didn't have the gun skills or the mindset or whatever. But by the end of that day, they cut it down to the last 3, and I got cut. And man, I remember it was almost surreal. It was that part of a movie where you come home and your house is on fire or something like that, and you're like, this can't be happening, because in your head, not that I felt entitled to it or I deserve it, but it's just I went all in. So I only saw it going one way, and that was all the work was going to pay off, all the sacrifice, and I was going to be on this team. And when he called those last 3 names, it was like LP Everett, Gino Bendicto, and Dylan Hopkins, I think. Or no, it was this kid Alex Young from Arsenal, who he doesn't even play anymore. Like it's a shame, because 2 of those guys don't even play anymore, and then they just ended up picking LP Everett, who used to play with all those guys on Strange. So when they picked him, it was like he was a baller, but it's like, man, he was your old teammate. Why didn't you just bring your own team back? Like, why even get all these other guys' hopes up to just grab your teammate who took a few years for Meta, But anyway, yeah, I asked him why. I asked Joey and Jason Edwards. I was like, so I just want to know so I know what to work on or why I didn't get picked, because I thought I was having a good tryout. And they were like, dude, honestly, we like the way you play paintball. Good field IQ. Your gun skills are great. You can play the game, but you played the defensive player the entire day. And we were looking for the guy who, even if he got shot making mistakes or died early, he was willing to go up there and bloody knuckles and trade out with people or crawl all the way down the snake and maybe catch one in the pack, but at least he showed he was willing to go. And they were like, you were trying to keep your body alive, too valuable, and you would win games, but you were almost never willing to go first. So we think you need a few more years in semi-pro to learn how to like work on your own winnability and go win the game yourself, like go down the field, not just like support other players. And you got to get in better shape. Like you still have a long way to go. And I went home almost blacked out. Like I don't even remember how I got home. I didn't have a car, so someone was pick me up. But I remember I got home and I thought about that 10 months of like just misery, where other than at the paintball field, I was like, miserable and barely eating anything good the whole time. And I destroyed my entire rental house and backyard. Like, I started ripping pieces out of the fence and tore apart the little fake above ground pool and just started throw it. Like the house was already kind of white trashy, where there was just stuff all over the backyard. I just started grabbing one thing and breaking the next thing with it. And for the entire rest of that evening, I just destroyed everything, and then went across the streets of the bodega and got like a cheap 12-pack of King Cobras and got really drunk and just kind of sat there like self-pitying myself. Like, what do I do now? I guess I'm gonna have to move back to New York. My roommate gets home and wonders what the hell happened. Everything's destroyed. I'm sitting there with a bunch of beer cans empty. Like it was like my bottom of the bottom, like lowest of the low, because I'm like, oh, I basically live in the ghetto. I have no friends here. I have no other reason to live down here. And now I have no money to leave. So I'm stuck down here and I'm not playing pro paintball. So yeah, it was a pretty brutal like rest of the weekend. And then I remember my buddies were coming down because that would have been right at the beginning of the season, around like it must have been March or April. So my friends were coming down to play the national collegiate finals. And I had already been a coach and a national champion player with that UB team. So even though I wasn't on the team anymore, because this is the year after I graduate, they said, "Hey, it's in Orlando, Florida every year. Would you mind meeting up and coaching us?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." And I coached them, and they ended up getting second place that year, which was really cool. But they came back to drop me off after the last day of like, getting second. We're all celebrating that they got to finals and stuff like that with a relatively new team, some freshmen and stuff. And they're looking around at my just horrible like crack house in this neighborhood that's like falling apart, where like, you can hear car alarms going off down the street and like a gunshot at least once a week and stuff like that. And they know that I didn't make the team because I talked to them the whole weekend while I'm coaching them. And they were like,
Right.
"Dude, do you want to go back home to New York?" And I looked around and I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Well, we have an extra space in the van. You can't bring all your stuff, but if you want to grab your paintball stuff and like your most valuables, we'll give you a few hours to pack and you could take the 24-hour road trip back to Buffalo with us." And I was like, man, I mean, what other options do I really have at the time? I'm not going to keep doing this, $7 of eggs and bread a week for nothing to look forward to anymore. Like that was the hope that I was willing to put up with all this for. So called my mom and said, "Mom, I didn't make the team, as you know. My friends are offering me a ride back because I can't even afford a flight or anything like that. I don't have a car to move back. Would you mind if I move back home for a little bit, and at least until I get back on my feet?" And she was like, "Absolutely. It's been almost a year at this point, so your parents always miss you." So they're like, "Yeah, it's no problem. You can come home as long as you want." So I was like, "All right, guys, cool." And they were like, "Good. We do not want to leave you in this shithole any longer than you have to be here." So they helped me
True
pack up.
friends.
Yeah, really, really good friends. I still owe them all. And so, yeah, I helped them all, or they helped me pack up. We get in the car, we drive straight shot like we had so many years in a row. When I was in college, right back to Buffalo. I get home by the next day. That time must have been like Monday, 8 o'clock at night. Went in my own bed, passed out for like a day or two, and just kind of decompressed. And then I remember waking up and, this is where like the turning point happened. Like my brother had been getting into like meditation and like listening to like Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra, those guys who are like self-improvement type people. They're very much about like you are the master of your own life. And, only a few weeks ago, I was like kind of, at the bottom of the bottom, wondering where my life was going to go here. Because if I didn't make pro paintball and I committed my whole life to pro paintball, then I guess I'm just going to get some crappy job I don't like and throw in the towel. I think I was going to keep playing for fun, but it was just going to be a hobby at that point.
Right.
And then my brother put me onto these audiobooks about like, not playing the victim and taking responsibility and doing everything you can to like, to visualize your path and really prioritize every single part of your life towards getting to that path. And I remember waking up with like this rejuvenated mindset where I was like, Mom, would you mind getting me a gym membership at this Anytime Fitness down the street? Like I've been going for runs and stuff like that, but I need to actually get in shape if I'm going to do this. And that was kind of when she realized, oh, so you're still going to keep trying for this pro paintball goal. Like, you're almost 22 at this point and you didn't make it the first time, practicing 5 days a week. Like what's going to be the difference? But that was like, if I could think of all the turning moments of my life, that was the most like important one, because in that day I went to the gym and began working out 2 to 3 hours a day every day. And I went cold turkey from like all my vices. Like I stopped eating any fast food, any type of soda. I stopped drinking for that whole year. Like I'll drink some beers now and again here now, but back then I stopped drinking. I used to like, smoke weed here and there, and I stopped smoking. And I just remembered thinking about it so black and white, where it was like, is this going to help you play pro paintball? No, then you can't do it anymore. So
get it out.
So I stopped snowboarding or anything that would risk any kind of bodily injury. I stopped going out and hanging out with friends, even though I was around that college age, 21-ish. I stopped going to any parties like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, because even if I showed up on time the next day, I didn't want to be hungover. I didn't want to be low energy, even like anything less than 100% on practice days. I stopped spending money on anything stupid. Like I used to be a lot more of a negative person where, I would spiral and drink if I was pissed off, and I was a more aggressive guy, and I was kind of your typical New York thuggish archetype. Yeah, kind of a scumbag, like I feel like deep down I had a good heart. Like I was never a violent person or whatever, but you could kind of tell like what my overall values were back then, and paintball wasn't the top priority. Like as much as I said it was, and I loved it and had passion for it, your actions kind of always you can see if your actions reflect your words. And I tell this to people who ask me how to get to pro all the time now. I'm like, do you really want to play pro paintball? And they're like, yeah, I want to play it more than anything. And I'm like, well, that's funny because I still see you, spend a lot of money on like new sneakers and, just buying stupid flashy shit, or, going out on Friday night when you have practice Saturday. And they're like, yeah, but I still show up. And I'm like, well, do you think somebody who's the best in the world at any other professional sport does that or did that to get there? You think Michael Jordan did that when he was chasing the dream? No. And I'm like, all right, so why are you the outlier or the exception? Like, shouldn't you have to do at least what they did, if not more? So, around that time, I before that, I was one of those kids through college before that Florida move where I was putting rims on my cars and, just buying dumb stuff. And at this point, anything that wasn't going to help me get to pro, I no longer bought or I no longer did. And if the question could be answered, will this help me get to pro? Yes, I started doing it. So I started doing things like working out more, yoga, eating really clean, drinking pretty much nothing but like water and almond milk and kombucha and stuff like that. And, reading more books like The Art of War and things to like kind of evolve my strategic mindset. And it's crazy because it took 1 year of that. One super disciplined year. By the end of that year, I was in almost the best shape of my life. Well, at the time, the best shape of my life. I was finally down to like 185 and like, could actually see some muscle finally. Like I wasn't just a blob. My face looked healthier because I hadn't been drinking and smoking. I took care of myself. Like I started like having more respect and self-confidence where I wouldn't just, let myself start looking crappy or let my hair get ridiculous and not give a shit. I wouldn't just wear the same, pair of clothes 8 days in a row. And I just started treating myself not only on the field like I already had, but off the field, I started treating myself as if I was already a professional. And by the end of that year, this NPPL pro team called me and they asked me if I wanted to play. And then I started playing pro paintball. And that was it.
No, man,
that kind of answered the question we had.
What do you do
to prepare for a tournament?
Or even prepare to be pro? Eat eggs.
So are you asked, like, what would I tell somebody else that? Or what do I specifically do?
What do you specifically do?
Preparing, so those are kind of two different things. I'll answer the easier one first, preparing for a tournament. So when I prepare for a tournament, my kind of lifestyle is already like this. Like I eat pretty clean. Recently I've got into baking, so I like baking chocolate chip cookies and stuff. But for the most part, like I don't eat fast food, I don't eat junk food, I don't eat any like chips or snacks or crackers or any of those things that you get in like the middle area of the grocery store. I eat a lot of fruit, a lot of vegetables, and fish. I don't eat any red meat. I don't really eat carbs unless it's the night before an event and I need the extra energy. I don't drink any soda, any energy drinks, sports drinks. I work out every day anyways, but when a tournament's coming, I'll work out a little bit lighter so I don't burn out my muscles. And then I'll take a full day or two off before the tournament. Like I won't work out and then be like, all right, I'll work out till Thursday and then the tournament starts Friday. I'll work out till like Tuesday or Wednesday and then just relax all day long, drink a ton of water, eat some more proteins to like help build the muscles, maybe do like go for a walk, like, you know, not a strenuous hike, but like a nature walk, and do some yoga to like limber up and stay loose. But that's about it. In that week, like already it's not going, I can't remember the last time I've gotten drunk or anything like that, but I like a good craft beer, like a stout with my meals and stuff like that. But coming up to the week of a paintball tournament, I don't drink anything. I just don't do anything unhealthy really, so that I'm at 100%. And I've already been practicing. Obviously, you have the layout weekends coming up, but for that whole week, I'll watch a lot of Go Sports. Specifically, I'll watch the matches of teams that I know are going to play in prelims because I already know I'm playing those teams. And I'll try to watch everybody, but I'm going to really study those teams because I'm not just looking at how the team plays, I'm watching individual tendencies. And that's kind of what I key up on, you know, like I can already tell what's going to be the strong and the weak side of the field based on how a line lines up at the box, because I know which guys, like, all right, on that side, you have two guys that are both willing to go. They're both aggressive. So if your snake one dies, that snake side two guy is going to continue the attack down the field. But the other side, if you shoot that front guy, that back guy is a little bit slower or a little bit more hesitant. So if anything, he's going to fill out to the corner to like plug the hole and like stop the bleeding. But we don't really necessarily have to worry about him flying down the field. So that's going to be their defense side. The other side is going to be their offense side. And granted, a lot of pro teams, like, you know, especially the top 6 teams like Houston Heat and stuff like that, they don't really have flaws like that. Like they have, you know, their entire line are versatile guys that can play every spot. So it's harder to pick on it. But yeah, at the very least, the bottom 10 teams mostly all have a couple of things where there's players that have tendencies you can kind of see, and I will choose to bully those guys, or I'll put the extra gun on that side's front guy to know that, all right, that side's already going to slow down if we just really key up on shooting that one fast guy off that side. That's pretty much my before tournament routine. Coming into pro paintball is, I guess I would just summarize everything I did. At one point, I wrote an article about it. I wish I could find it on PB Nation. Like after that first or second year I went pro, where I wrote like what you have to do aspiring pro players. And it's like the things that, you know, most pros won't tell you. Like they'll tell you the cliche things of like, oh, work hard and stuff like that. But it's not just about hard work. Like reaching the pinnacle in anything in life, not even just sports, but in anything, it takes hard work. It takes commitment, dedication, persistence, just nonstop trying, because you don't know that you might give up the year before you would have made it. So, you know, the biggest 2 things I'd say are like the patience and persistence. Just understanding that it's not going to come when you think you're ready. There was plenty of times that I thought I was ready for being pro before I went pro, because I was beating up on all the pro guys at my local field in one-on-ones. But that's just one part of the game. Like, oh, whoop-de-doo, you can beat so-and-so in a one-on-one. Let's see you play the chess game like they do. And that was something I didn't realize. So the patience and persistence to realize that you will never go pro when you think you're ready. You'll go when the game feels you're ready for it. And that's kind of something that is hard to explain, other than people are watching you. Like after a certain point, once you're, you know, they're not watching you when you're D3, But once you've been around the block and you've proven that you're there consistently, like, that 80% of it's just showing up thing. If you're one of those guys that, all right, it's been like 4 or 5 years, like let's say I'm a pro player. If there's this semi-pro guy that I keep seeing over and over and over again on the Sunday finals field, by now that guy's caught my eye. I might even know that guy's full name by now because it's like, man, I think we saw this kid in finals last event, and he had that really clutch point, and boom, oh, he just got a 3-pack. That's someone who's catching my eye. Like, it takes a while till you're around consistently enough that people see patterns. You could win one event where you're the all-star there and nobody might remember it because it's one time. You know what I mean? It's like those guys who show up in their all-star 1 point or one practice, but then they shit the bed the other points or practices. So in the long term, the best thing I can tell people is they have to like stay patient and stay with it, because it could take 3, 4, 5. It took me like 7 seasons of D1 semi-pro till it finally happened. Like, most people would have given up after like that 3rd or 4th good season of like constantly making Sunday. But I was like, oh, I guess I'm just going to keep going until they notice me, or until it's been like I've been the standout on enough teams that I've been through. And then it was finally like apparent, you know what I mean? Beyond that, the other big thing to get to pro, and this is what I try to tell everybody you ask me, because, by now I see people the way like a pro coach would see them. Like, I think about when somebody's like, yo, I think I'm ready to play pro, Joe. Like, would you look at me for your team? I'm always straight up with them and very like honest and blunt and forward. And I'll go, listen, you've been playing semi-pro for a year or two now. I think you need a little more experience, but more than anything, I see you posting stupid stuff about, doing hood rat stuff with your friends on Facebook. And do you think any, professional sports team in any sport that has sponsors behind them is going to pick up the guy that's entire story is playing beer pong and stuff like that? No, it's just not going to happen. So the other part of going pro is you can work as hard as you can, but on the field, and you can be the best player on the field on the team they're looking at. But if you're kind of one of those guys who shows up late to practice every other time, or you only ever come to the mandatory practices rather than every weekend, you're just not always showing up, or you like to party and screw around and you don't really care if the public eye notices you, or on social media you curse people out and swear, and you get in dumb online internet arguments. People are watching that, whether you think it or not. They see that stuff, and they might have been considering you, and as soon as you go, oh, I hate this stupid so-and-so company's gun, now that company's not even looking at you anymore. Because if you were trying out for their team and you just blatantly put a post that everybody can see publicly that says this gun is a piece of trash, how are they going to use you to market? You're basically, you have to be a mobile commercial for them, and you're just somebody who smack talk their product. So you have to treat yourself professionally on the field and off the field. And it means in every aspect of your life, where it's kind of like, the easiest way I can say to do that is like what I did, where I said, is this going to help me go pro or be on a pro team? Yeah, then I'm doing it. Is this helping me go pro or stay on a pro team? No, then I won't do it, or I need to now cut that part of my life out. Like, I need to X out that vice, or I need to stop acting in that negative manner that looks bad on me or could look bad on my team that I want to be on. And within 1 year of that, it made a world of difference, because it's not like it happens overnight. There were probably still some mistakes that I had to undo, but a year is enough time to go by where people see the new you and they kind of forget about the couple little dummy mistakes you made or toes you stepped on, so it sucks to say, but the biggest thing people have to willing to commit to go pro in paintball is the time, because you need the time to get the experience, and you need the time to show off that new, more professional you that's like very honed with the edges nice and cleaned up, and things like that.
So I know you played all over. I know you played on with Federal too in Harrison, KTM. Talk about that.
Yeah, man, that was a blessing of an experience too. I remember that was, let's see here, that would have been after 2 World Cups ago. I'm playing with DMG at this point, and I got a call from this woman, Fazlin, who is she is a company figure for KTM, the motocross company, their Malaysia sector. So obviously, she's almost one of those Bart or Sarge type team owners. Like, she's not just in the paintball industry. She freaking runs KTM Motorsports Malaysia branch. And she has always enjoyed paintball and played and has fun here and there, and kind of like brings in her favorite pro players to guest with her at little tournaments. Well, she hit me up and said, "Hey, I want to play what's the event called? WCA, I think, World Cup Asia in Langkawi, in beautiful little Langkawi, Malaysia, which is this island that I had played for a previous time 2 or 3 years back with Cobra Kai, and we got second place in open division, only losing by 1 overtime point to the Thailand national team, Asia One, who are a stellar team. Like, they're all 4 feet tall and lightning fast. It's pretty tough to play a little fast Asian team like that. And they've been playing together for like 10 years. So of all the teams over in Asia, Asia One is like the most real team. And we ended up actually playing them again this event, and they're still really good. But anyways, so Faz hits me up and she says, "I want to play this event." And at the time, she has a couple people, including Jason Burns, who is a pro player in Europe. He actually now plays for Russian Legion. He's their new guy. And then a few of her friends. But she's like, "But I need more people. I need to fill out the roster." And she's willing to, I guess kind of cut some of her own local friends to bring in more all-stars. And she wants to just fully pay for the team. So I was like, all right, well, let me see what I can do.
Samuel.
So I immediately reach out to 2 of my travel buddies that I've traveled with before, Harrison Fry, who I've played with in Mexico many times and a bunch of other countries. And I was like, "Harrison, you want to play for the dream team in Asia?" And he's like, "Yep." And then I asked my roommate, Ben Challenger, who I've also traveled and played a lot of different leagues and states and, countries with. And Benny lives with me. He just moved in. So I was like, "Ben, you want to play with me in Asia?" And he's like, "Yep." And we had already had a plan to go to Australia to play Super Sevens. So it's like, oh man, this tournament's getting better and better. We're going to link these. We're going to go from Super Sevens in Australia to Malaysia, and then to a beach event in Pattaya, Thailand. So we're about to do like 2 months of backpacking, because the events are kind of spaced apart like a week or two, where we just like, go to some exotic island for like a week or so, and then play an event, and then go to the next one and repeat. So I get those 2, and then Harrison says, "Joey B," like he always does. He calls me up. He's like, "Joey B, I just got us some ringers." And I was like, all right, cool. I was hoping we'd get more like cool people that we're already friends with who are down to travel. But who'd you get? And he's like, "I got our friend Trowick, who plays for NYX. He's actually back on NYX now, but he used to play with NYX when me and Harrison Fry were on the team in 2014 or 15. He's like, "I got Trowick." And I was like, sweet. I haven't played with Trowick since New York Extreme. And he's like, "And I got Mishka and Fedorov." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yes, I got Mishka and Fedorov." And I was like, all right, cool. And at the time, Fedorov was injured. He had like tweaked his knee or ankle at World Cup. And he's like, Faz wanted Fedorov because she loves him. It's good for promotional. And he might not play, but he'll be our coach. But Mishka wanted to bring him. And I was like, sounds good to me, man. So we show up to the event, and we have like this dream team. Like, every one of us is a pro player, but it's open division, so we can all play. And then we have Faz and her one Australian friend. And we are just, it's crazy. Like Fedorov, I've had a lot of really good coaches, but Fedorov sees the game very creatively. You can tell by the way he plays. He floats around a lot. He does these dynamic fills from unexpected bunkers where you think he's going one way, and then he shifts back to the entire other side of the field. So he would set up plays like that. So it's like one of the most strenuous tournaments I've ever played, because here we have 4 prelims and then Sunday. In Asia, they do, I think it's 9 prelims. They do it in Australia too. So 9 prelim games. So not only are you playing a lot more paintball, but they want to keep their upper division teams there all day so the divisional players and their friends and families can watch pro players. So here's your schedule. You wake up at like 4 a.m. You take your moped and ride to the field, like after like a little bit of breakfast. You gear up, you fill your paint. We have a little bit of pod crew because we have like, 2 extra guys that aren't really going to get a lot of play time. And Foz doesn't really want to play herself unless you're way up points. She's kind of scared to play. So we would get her in when we were like 4-0, and she'd be just ecstatic to play, next to me and Mishka. So you get to the field and you play your first game at like somewhere between 6:30 and 7:30. Then you take this huge 4-hour break till like 11 or 12, play another game. And then you take like a huge 5 or 6 hour break to like 5 or 6 in the evening. So at this point, we'll like ungear, hop on our mopeds, go to the beach, ride around the island for a little bit, get lunch, come back an hour or 2 before the game, gear up, maybe watch a match to like, scout someone or something like that, play a game at 5 or 6, and then you play your last game somewhere between 10 and 11:45, and the games are over by midnight. and then you quickly ungear, leave your stuff all laying around in this big sports stadium. Like, it gets locked at night, so it's kind of cool, and you can put your guns in lockers. That's about the only thing I'm worried about, like, losing is my gun, my marker set up. And then you hop on your moped. And at this point, you're starving, so you go to some little like cantina and eat some Malay food. And then you get back to your hotel on the other side of the island, shower real quick. By this time, it's somewhere between 11:30 and 1, depending on when you played. Go to sleep, and then 3 or 4 hours later, you wake up and you do it again. And so the longest days I've ever played are all the times that I've been to Asia. Just, endless 20-hour days where you're like, oh my God, like, luckily you have big gaps, so you have to just live at the field. You can leave it, but you're just playing throughout the entire day long. They never just give you a close bracket because they want you there to spectate. So 2 days in a row like this, and we are just kicking the crap out of everyone. Like, teams cannot handle you there. Most of these teams are like, I'd say most Asian teams and Middle Eastern teams, like aside from the top few I can name, like Dadis from Iran, which is heavily sponsored, Asia One from Thailand, and most of the other teams, it's kind of like playing against a D3 team, even though you're in open. Like, their D1 open teams, I'd say, are like our D3 teams. They're good. They know what they're doing, but they don't play the game the same way we play at a semi-pro or pro level, and they don't have nearly the gun skills that Mishka or Harrison or I have. So you're either wiping them off the field in 30 seconds as a team, or they luck out and they shoot 2 guys off break, and you still just win the 3-on-5 because they can't handle you. So we're maxing all of our games through prelims, except for our only competition. Russian Legion show up with a 5-guy roster and their coaching staff. So they're using this event to kind of like, travel and do a bucket list thing, but more than anything, they're giving those young rookies that are starting to get a lot of playtime now. They weren't getting that much playtime that whole season that just ended. So their squad doesn't really have any of their starters other than Malloy. They have Malloy, Golev, Samotrov, and Karsliev, who are superstars now the past 2 seasons, but 2.5 seasons ago they were really good and fast and aggressive, but they were still inconsistent and like getting their wings under them, So now it's time to give those guys every point of play time because they're giving them a 5-guy roster. And who was the last one? Kozyrev. So you got the 3 young guys, Golev and Malloy for the 2 veterans with him, and then their coaching staff. And that's still a really good team. Like, by all means, that's still 5 guys who are all excellently talented, and they actually play together. They're a real team. Right. So it's them versus this superstars team. Like, the basic line on my team is like Ben Challenger in the snake front, me behind him, we're playing like a 2-guy snake side, and then we have Mishka and Harrison on the D side, and Jason Burns playing up the center because for some reason in Asia they're still playing with the wall. So we're playing kind of like up the middle, but like a 3-guy D side, and then me and Ben on a snake side. The snake side's a long straight ladder, so as long as you're in the corner, you can hold it fine. So even if we lost Benny, I would just kind of play the island over there and just live in the snake corner. And we're going point for point with Russian Legion. And it gets up to 3-3, and then we get a third point or a fourth point, and I think we had to hold for 1 minute, and they shot 2 off break, and we didn't cross up correctly. And one guy, I think it was Malloy, like weaved towards the middle like he would, like not right through the middle, kind of like cutting, like shadowing each bunker, like edging hoppers. And they beat us with like 6 seconds left, and we just said, yeah, it's not enough time, we'll just blow the whatever. And it doesn't matter. At this point, we're 8-1, so we're moving out of prelims. So we have 1 loss to Russian Legion. I forgot there were some other good teams that were like should be challenging for us. Like there was Breakout Spa, who we would play the next event with in Thailand, and they're good, but we just beat them. Like we had too much talent on the roster. They're a real team, but compared to the Russians, they're not quite as good. So some of us were having really good points, and we beat Breakout Spa. And then we also there's this Super Sevens team from Australia that's pro, and I remember they were pro in Europe for a season. They were actually pretty good because they had a couple dynasty guys.
Expendables?
What's that?
Expendables?
Expendables. That was the team. So Expendables, and they have Yosh Rao and Maddie Kling and Blake Yarber. So they have a pretty good team, but we beat them like 4-1. Like we just kind of handled them. So at this point, we're like, oh my God, guys, as long as we can figure out Russian Legion with more scouting, we could win this tournament. So we go into Sunday. At this point, it's all the teams you'd expect. It's like Expendables, Russians, us, Breakout Spa, Datus, Asia One, and then like whatever 2 other teams to finish out like the top 8. And we just start beating the crap out of teams. Finally, it comes down to the end of the day, and it's us versus Russian Legion again. And man, it was such I wish they recorded this game because it was such fireworks the whole game. Like momentum swings point to point, where they'd be up a body 2-on-3. I'd shoot one of them. It's 2-on-2. Things are looking good, but then Malloy does something clutch. Now it's 2-on-1, and then they close me out. And it's back and forth like that until it's finally, I think, 3-2 them. And I remember I'm in a 2-on-1. There's a guy across from me in the Doritos. I'm in the snake now, and a guy ahead of me in the snake corner. It's young Samotrov. And I shoot the guy to the Doritos, and it's like 37 seconds left, just not a lot of time. And he's head to head with me. So I jump over the snake, work back in towards the W, shadow him out with a bunch of pins, and start shooting my way towards the buzzer because I have to hit the buzzer. And I shoot my way all the way to the buzzer, and I shoot him in the hopper, and he shoots me in the face, like on my way to sliding into the buzzer. So I'm not even allowed to hit the buzzer. We trade out, time ends, and we're down 1 point. And Russian Legion wins. We get second. Everybody's going wild. And, I'm not even mad at it at this point because I lost to Russian Legion with basically a pickup team. Like, yeah, we're all pro players, but none of us have ever played together before except for, me and Harrison in certain events. But, like, as a team, we haven't practiced. And it was just such an exciting moment to be like, man, guys, we just got second to one of the best teams in the world with, like, their coach here and Malloy and everything like that. And then we all went and, just we had already been getting closer, doing all these activities that like Foz would bring us, like hiking and like taking this like gondola to the top peak of the mountain and going on boat rides and snorkeling and scuba diving together. We had done so much that by the end of the first week being there, we had become like a bunch of brothers, and Foz was our sister. And by the end of this tournament, we were all super close. And I just remember, like, finally being able to talk to Fedorov and Mishka, who, we had known each other from playing against each other in pro for a few years because I had even been around sense damage. And you have respect for each other as adversaries, and I'm not like a smack talker, so there's no ill will. But I didn't really know these guys on a personal level. But now, like, we're leveling with each other. Like, I know these guys as friends, and we get to talk about each other's lives. And, I didn't know Mishka was a dad, and I didn't know some of the things that Fedorov had grown up doing and stuff like that. So, we're just all going to this players party and celebrating, and I'm getting to ask them for tips and advice on my own game, which, they're probably not going to give me that advice beforehand since we play on other pro teams in the US. But now I can actually ask them, like, yo, I know that, we are opponents, but like, what do you think I could work on? And they would tell me what to fix in my own game. And, I still have a lot of respect for them for that. And Fedorov actually ended up coaching me again because he was coaching my Euro team that I was guesting with, Kiev United. That's a pro team in NXL. And when Fedorov wasn't playing, because he plays in NXL Europe, if games weren't conflicting, he would come over and coach us. So me and Fedorov already had a little bit of like coaching rapport, because he knew that he could give me a job and trust that I would go do it and be like at least one of his consistent, like, dependable guys. Like, I'm not going to lose the game for you. But now, like, playing side by side with him and backpacking around Asia and stuff like that, like, I got to know this guy a different way. And then we get to, shoot the shit with all these other teams that to them we're superstars, which is still kind of like a new humbling experience for me. I haven't been around like for as long as Ollie Lang and all these guys. So when, 2 or 3 teams of D3 Asian players run up to me and say, oh, hey, can we get your autograph? Or that move you did here was so cool. Or, how do you play the game like this? Or just asking you for stories. It's really cool to get people's like their actual undivided attention like that, and like, captivate them. And I always kind of use it as I always take opportunities of those moments to pay it forward. It's kind of been my big thing since the first time I started traveling and getting the chance to do this is, I'm not really going to be the one to just like brag about how felt cool it was to like win a certain point. Instead, I'll tell them, what it means to me to get to connect to the paintball community, and just show them that like, hey, we're pro players, but a lot of us are just people. Like, we're pretty down to earth, and, we'd rather hear from you. Like, do you have a favorite spot in this country, because you live here and I don't, that you want to bring me to? Like, let's just go be people and like, backpack around and have a drink. And, my big thing is like trying to bridge the gap, because so many people in our world, and this is off topic from this event, I guess, but a lot of people just see people as divided. I'm this color, you're that color. I'm from this country, you're from that country. Oh, they're from that country. Isn't that kind of third world and scary? I bet those people are dangerous. But once you start traveling a lot, and by now I've traveled a lot, like in my pro years, I've played paintball in over a dozen different countries and way more cities and islands. And I just see that everybody is so much more similar than we are different. So, I try to not be that stereotypical, rah nationalist American, because it's not that people don't like Americans, but people don't like the typical stereotypical loudmouth American that is not mindful of other people in their environment, doesn't care about other people's cultures. Like, you're disrespectful, and it's like, well, you're not even in America anymore. Why are you being disrespectful of them in their own land? Or very cocky or very belligerent. Like, most Americans that travel, they travel as tourists, and they like to party and get way too drunk and then get obnoxious and offend people. Well, I don't like to travel as a tourist. I like to travel as a traveler, more as a backpacker, where I don't go to places and get the nice resort hotel where I'm basically in an Americanized bubble. I like to go to the hostels and really practice immersing myself into the customs and the culture. And if there's something that's big there that they do, I look for that event. Or if there's a certain way you eat food and I can sit down with random locals and say, hey, would you mind, showing me how you guys do things?
Right.
I do that every single chance I get. And it's just so fun to kind of find that like interconnected oneness with another culture and realize how quickly you could just be like, man, I could live here. Like I could do this. All the things that I'm, cemented to back home in the US
Don't matter.
They don't matter. They're not real. There, of course, there's some things that are morals and values and stuff like that. But all the things that you're raised to think this is how we do things, it's only because random chance that you were born there. It's not because it's right or wrong. And so it's just been very fun to me, like to just become more experimental with my own personality and practice, different ways to live and to be social and to kind of become a chameleon into every and any situation that can arise.
Man, that was fun. I traveled America a little bit. I would agree. I'd be.
Hey, can you say that again? I think maybe slowly to your microphone. It broke up a little bit. I felt like I got every other word.
And everyone outside the country.
It's kind of raspy. Travis, say something real quick.
Yeah. What he's trying to say is that he's played a lot out of the country. And he thinks the same thing.
Gotcha. Okay, I thought you said, but I'm missing every word. And Travis, I can hear you perfectly clearly, but John, your mic is a little bit I don't know, it's almost staticky every other word. So it's like I get parts of words, but yeah, that I'm happy that you've gotten to experience that too, John, because I can say of all the things I've done in this world, traveling, just having been allowed to have my sport be the vehicle that drives me to all these new places and experiences and cultures and different perspectives of life has been the most rewarding and the most educating thing I've ever done, hands down. Like even over college, I can say that I've learned more in 1 week in each country than I have in a year of education or social situations at my university. Yeah, so I know I played against you in UWL, but who have you played with or traveled to? I know there's other people who travel out there, but I didn't know that you travel and play in other international leagues.
Costa Rica. So what's both?
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh man, you're lucky that you got to do Costa Rica. If you did Woods Ball, did you do that one UWL Mexico?
Cancun.
Yes, you were there with Black or Master Blasters too, right?
Yeah.
That's why I knew you, because I remember we played you in that one too, and I was playing with Scorpions. And if you remember, my team owner Tierra got in a fist fight out in the woods with one of the teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a sweet event.
That field was dangerous.
It was. Yeah, I remember somebody tripped running on a pathway trying to get away, and they fell and took a piece of a stump that was filed off right at the bottom, like a kind of like a flattened spot, and they took it right through the forearm, I think. It was yeah, that was it was fun, but I even said the next year, they were like, do you want to go back and do that one? And I was like, honestly, man, I don't think I would play that Woodsfield again, just because it's one thing to be playing it as a bunch of little kids. I'm not knocking that field. I think it's a fun field and it's great for the recreational players locally in Mexico. And I think it's all they have. But tournament players are going to be running and diving. And there was just too many hidden rocks and stumps underneath that thick foliage where, if you weren't already crawling, if you went and hit the deck, you might freaking seriously break a rib or impale yourself.
I agree. View on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, guys. So I think we're going to start to close it up here because if we get into DMG, we're going to be here for another 2 hours.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know how long you guys want to keep these, or if you'd rather they break up into 2 or 3 videos so they don't go endless. Because, yeah, I mean, I don't even think we touched on Tampa Bay damage, and all this is just about paintball. So I didn't know what else you wanted to talk about, or New York, the New York scene of paintball, or
we're gonna get to a lot of it.
Yeah,
but we'll hit up damage later, maybe hopefully if there's more events this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would let's do a recap at the end of the year.
Sounds good to me.
All right, cool, man. But I'll plug all your sponsors right now. Let us know who helps you do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So I want to give a big shout to all of my team sponsors, which include Planet Eclipse for the best marker on Earth. I love my team CS2. Hit them up for signature guns. They make awesome custom markers. HK Army, which I am so pumped to finally have as a sponsor. I've been a long time personally sponsored HK player ever since I was a little kid. And that company wasn't even that big yet. They were just making black long sleeves and headbands back then. But it's been, I think, 5 or 6 years since I've been on an HK team. And we finally switched over to them with DMG this year. And I am ecstatic. I love their gear. These joggers are the comfiest paintball pants I've ever worn. Our jerseys look amazing. Their soft goods are great. The magnet pack's great. We love you guys, HK. And, great media. That's really a for the players company. And I can't say enough about HK and actually a bunch of my good friends on that team, Marky and, B Fort and just the whole HK crew. They were actually in Asia the first time I went there to Malaysia when I was on Cobra Kai. And so I did a bunch of island hopping with those guys. So even off the field, they're great people. They're good for the sport. They're good people. And they're a people and a company that we should support. And even during the times of quarantine, I know they have a bunch of sales and stuff going on right now on their discount, like big 50% off things and buy a gun, get a tank and stuff like that. So if you can support HK and support all these companies, because, just like we need them during the season for our gear and our guns, right now they need us. And it's up to us to make sure that they don't go bankrupt and fall apart before we get back to normal life. Beyond them, I want to thank, who did I not name yet? I gotta look around at my sponsors. Sorry, blanking out. Capital Edge Paintball Park, of course. That's a big one. Capital Edge is our training facility and combat arena where not only we get such a good facility, 2 full turfed out X-ball fields and a bunch of rec ball fields for fun, but Dave Baines is my team owner and field owner, and because of him, we get Edmonton Impact as our sparring partner throughout the year, as well. It helps a lot. It's upped our learning curve. Plus, we have a facility that's good enough and tempting enough that we can invite in a host of other pro teams like, Uprising, Thunder. We used to get Elevation when they were around, Dynasty. So, yeah, I can't say enough to, big thanks to Dave Baines, who is a great team owner for us and does a lot for me and my friends personally, and Capital Edge Paintball Park and all the crew and his family that run and keep such a nice field alive and flourishing. Beyond that, I've said soft goods, marker. Trying to think of who still sponsors us because we dropped a few at the end of the season. Big personal thanks to my own sponsor, Transfuse, who you can look up on Instagram at Transfuse Official or at Translabs. Transfuse makes, in my opinion, the best drink mix you could ever make. It's kind of like a Pedialyte, in the fact that it keeps you hydrated, which is great for paintball and any type of sport. But it's not just a Pedialyte hydrator. Transfuse also helps your immune system with just a shit ton of nutrients and supplemental value inside of it. So it's been especially helpful right now. I drink one every day, even if I'm not doing something active, just to give me that immune boost. So I don't get sick. A bunch of these freaking sick people running around out there. I got a bunch of, COVID zombies trying to infect me. So I gotta, drink my daily Transfuse. And shout out to Steven at Transfuse and that whole company. I love you guys. Shout out to Free Flow and Buddy Bauer, the man, the myth, the legend. Even you guys know him. Anybody in Western New York or the Northeast knows Buddy Bauer. Everything he's done for me in the past, still even keeping up on me here and there and giving me almost fatherly wisdom and advice. But big shout out to Free Flow Technologies. For those of you who aren't into 10-man or classic paintball or UWL, Buddy brought back the OGest of OG autococker companies, Free Flow, and he makes the highest quality mechanical paintball marker on earth right now or has ever been. Those guys sent me my custom bleach anode Free Flow Millennium cocker, and it shoots buttery and dreamy and ball on ball. And honestly, if I'm not playing a mandatory practice against a pro or a semi-pro team, even on random, like on the X-Ball field, I use that in all our other weekends just because it shoots so accurate, and I just work on my one ball and snap shooting with it and stuff like that. So shout out to Free Flow for sending me my amazing marker and all you guys do to support me. Love you guys. And big thanks to my whole team, my entire camp, the DMG camp, pro all the way down through D5 and 3-man, all of my local friends, family, supporters, everybody who's ever supported me and helps me do what I can do. My close friends, Josh Hallberg, my roommate, Marvin, my partners in any business ventures I've ever tried and failed at, or people who've offered me random odd jobs in construction and things like that. My boy Tim on Uprising, my roommate Brandon Nickerson. Shout out to all you guys who have my back in the hardest and the worst times. And shout out to all you viewers out there, as well as this podcast. I want to thank you guys for doing something like this. I think it's something that the paintball community needs right now. Just, hearing stories and kind of having something to burn time in these long, boring days. So thank you guys for putting this out there and entertaining people and inspiring people too, because it makes me kind of want to do a podcast of my own type as well. So yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you,
man. Thank you, man. We're really into sharing the stories.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, man. So
thank you again to Joe Barrett from
Sacramento
DMG.
And we want to thank our sponsor, Diana Sport. Don't forget to use code OVERSHOT, 10% off. And always subscribe, rate, review. Thanks, guys.